Sean Curley here with USA Mortgage. I am joined by my buddy Brian Stevens with the Mortgage Shots. And this is our monthly installment of what in the hell's going on in the real estate market. And it seems like every other day there's a headline. It's something crazy going. So let's just jump right in. Um, Rocket Mortgage about a month ago buys Redfin. And I'm like, oh, okay. A mortgage company that's basically a call center or an online mortgage company buys a technology that has an amazing platform where there's millions of users, on their iPhones or the Androids, just sitting there looking at homes and stuff like that. Well, then they come back out a little bit over a week ago, and then they're buying Mr. Cooper, the largest servicer in the United States. Um, I'm going to let you talk about what do you think that their vision or how they're trying to protect themselves on why they're making these two large acquisitions, and will it affect most of us in the real estate market as being a realtor or a loan officer?
All right. Well, first thing, considering the past couple of weeks, I think we need to change the name of this of what in the hell is going on in the real estate industry to what in the F is going on in the real
Yeah,
estate
for sure,
industry.
for sure.
We've ramped it up. There's one thing we do crazy good. Okay. So this whole thing, in my estimation, is, excuse my French, a pissing match between United Wholesale Mortgage and Rocket. And I've got a lot of questions about both acquisitions that have taken place. So the first one we have is Redfin. Now, Redfin came as a stock swap, and that seemed a fairly reasonable place for them to be. What they're going to do is they're going to become a lead gen machine. So Rocket is
Mhm.
always, I've been over there and spoke with Dan Gilbert and the team, and they're always looking at different ways to generate leads. Redfin is a lead gen machine for them right now. The interesting part is Redfin has a mortgage division, which all of the deals that Redfin is doing, all of them have to go to the mortgage division. I actually spoke with a Redfin agent on a random phone call just a couple of weeks ago. I said, we want to do some marketing stuff for you over here. Is that possible? She goes, I got to run it by Redfin. Redfin holds those agents down so incredibly tight. They have to use Redfin sanctioned marketing. They cannot let anybody hold their house open, even other Redfin agents, but theirs, in all of their deals absolutely must, without exception, go to that retail division of Redfin for their mortgage. So is the acquisition from Rocket going to keep the status quo in place? Obviously, it'll be Rocket Mortgage now. So is this going to be feeding another division of Rocket Retail? Or is Rocket, as their CEO came out and said that this is also going to be something that's going to help feed and work with the wholesale. Now, their wholesale division and help mortgage brokers. Now, here's the whole thing. They're going to say that if it's true or not. They
Mhm.
have to say it. They're going to say that no matter what. No, this is going to benefit all partners of Rocket. It's a story of knaves and knights. So the acquisition and how they got it seems to be fairly decent. The price was steep. But what that does is it puts their real estate holdings, it makes their real estate holdings significantly larger. Now, with respect to Mr. Cooper, there's kind of two ways of looking at that one. That was just a stock swap. So what they did there is they dilute their stock. They drop, I believe, by like 20% the day that took place, and Mr. Cooper's stock obviously went up a little bit. So you think they kind of got like the largest servicing portfolio at a king's ransom. So that seems to be a very shrewd move on their part. When you consider the fact that 30% of that portfolio is probably loans that are in the twos and threes that will
Mhm.
perform for the next 10 or 15 years, you're saying, yes, this is great. The issue, what's that issue is everything else that's taking place, which we'll talk about in a moment, which is tariffs, which people who bought recently that are actually upside down on their mortgages right now. That's going to be part of the the servicing portfolio, loans that are not going to perform. So if we see in the coming months mortgages starting to fail and foreclosure numbers going up, and there's enough canaries in the coal mine to say that this is probably going to happen, there's going to be a fairly large percentage of that portfolio that could be difficult. Most people don't understand this, but when you're servicing a loan, when somebody quits paying on that loan, it is the obligation of the servicer to make that payment to make the investor whole. So this could actually cost Rocket a lot of money. Of course, they've got
Yeah.
deep pockets, but if we start to see something that resembles anything like we saw in 2008, those reserves could be depleted very quickly. The final point about this, is it a win or a loss? We saw this back in 2008 and 9. Whenever you see a market where there is a high probability of default, every regulatory agency under the sun comes out and starts screaming fraud. We just heard this from the Philadelphia Fed Reserve, a couple of days ago. They put out a white paper saying fraud is going up. We've seen this from the FHFA. We've heard this from HUD. The drums of fraud are starting to ring right now. And what it really comes down to, in my estimation, is a bunch of finger pointing. We are not here because of the bad policies we did. The fraud is, or the foreclosures are here because people have been perpetrating fraud. You're even hearing this over at Fannie and Freddie. We just had Bill Pulte, who runs the FHFA, come out and say, hey, we just fired 100 employees over at Fannie Mae because of fraud. This term fraud is going to come up time and time again, and they're looking for it because they're looking to place blame on anybody other than themselves, our policymakers. So when you buy this large portfolio, you start to take on a lot of responsibility. And when these deals start to get foreclosed on, everyone, not 1 in 10, not 1 in 100, every single file is going to be gone over with a fine-tooth comb. And here's what happens. When they find something where you literally maybe put the date down wrong, missed a signature, left something blank on the reams and reams of papers that you have to sign that we call loan docs right now, if there is anything that is wrong in there, that file is determined to be fraudulent. And that's a buyback. Now, this becomes a huge, huge issue for the industry. It's kind of, what was I going to say? It's kind of like COVID. Remember, like that when COVID came out, like the flu disappeared. Nobody got the flu that year. I don't know if you know this. Like literally, the flu virus went away when COVID came around. Nobody got the flu. Huh. Kind of the same thing with fraud over here. Everything is going to be put on the shoulders of fraud, and this could be an issue for a massive servicing portfolio. They got it at a great price, but they certainly took on some risk in doing it. The flip side of that, just real quickly, the flip side of that real quickly is you have these massive acquisitions over here by Rocket. And then on the other side of it, what we saw is United Wholesale. They just penned a partnership with Google AI. And so they're coming out and saying, well, this is going to be great for the consumer and great for the broker. Or is it going to be a means of circumventing the broker? Because you know who's got all the data? Facebook's got some of the data. Twitter's got some of TikTok's got some of the data. Google, just give your life to Google. They have all the data. Can you imagine the opportunity to become an autonomous marketing monster out there? You have got Google and you have got United Wholesale merged together. There's not a lot of room in there for loan officers. Again, I'm not saying it's going to go that way. So there's questions on either end, but I do think these massive acquisitions has a lot to do with the massive personalities.
Oh, for sure. It's always a piss and match with those two. So what you were talking about with Mr. Cooper and having maybe some portfolio challenges with foreclosures, I think we saw that playbook way back in the day with a company called Countrywide. And then
Who are they?
Yeah, only the largest servicer. I mean, we're saying the same words, but different logos.
Yeah.
Largest servicer gets in trouble. B of A buys them out, and then B of A got raked over the coals and lost a ton of money on trying to pick up all of those servicing rights whenever Countrywide was going down. And what's nuts is I remember, hell, it was 2007, 2006, 2005, something like that. Countrywide had the Fast and Easy program, stated income, stated asset. As long as you had a 680 credit score, I could get you 80% first, a 15% second. I don't care where that 5% down payment came down. And that was like a huge book or a huge percentage of their business. Like all of these, we would call them fund loans. And then whenever they didn't perform, that was kind of like what you just spelled out with what might happen with if there's any issues with foreclosures on Mr. Cooper's
I read Sheila Bair's book Bull by the Horns talking about
Yeah.
back when that was all taking place. And when you had Countrywide's portfolio, Bank of America, they said they were going to buy it. Then do you remember? They pulled out. We said, we don't want this. This is a problem. And then Ben Bernanke went over there and talked to the CEO of B of A and said, you were buying this. If you don't buy this, you will not have a job tomorrow. And then he bought it. He pissed off all of his investors. And then the same Ben Bernanke and all the regulators went over there and said, look at all this crap that you got. He ends up losing his job. It was how that whole thing went down. They should make a movie about that angle of it because that was crazy. And don't forget all those like fast and fun loans. Don't forget the Friends of Angelo loans, where he had special loans for all of our politicians and all the regulators where you would get below market rates and you didn't have to deal with that underwriting. And Christopher Dodd of the Dodd-Frank Act, Christopher Dodd of the Dodd-Frank Act got an illegal loan from Countrywide, and he was the one who was put in a position to set all the regulation that govern us today.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, the CFPB, it's so much fun just to see the
The
irony of
Manson
stuff.
family was less dysfunctional than ours.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So you touched on the fun, the hot word of the past week, 2 weeks is tariffs, tariffs, tariffs. Trump, the administration comes out, throws 100 tariffs or starts threatening 180 countries, talking about going 0-0 on tariffs within trade or whatever. We've seen some crazy, crazy stuff. I've been a little bit over 2 decades. You've been in this business for a little bit longer, and we've seen markets move and be dysfunctional. But this is a fun one to look at. And I can just what I'll do is I'll show for the folks because it's one thing to talk, it's another thing to show them. Um, Whenever we're looking at the 10-year Treasury, this is what we look at to kind of let me share it. This is what we kind of look at to see what in the hell we think that rates are going to do, what investors are going to come out with. And, if we look on a yearly, ever since January 15th, yeah, there were some up days, but the lower that this go, the sexier interest rates get. But something happened on April 7th. We have went all the way up to where it actually opened up at 4.59 today. Now it's come down a little bit. But this huge green is really, really bad for us whenever we're talking about interest rates. And it means that interest rates that we were just talking about 10 days ago that were getting sexier, sexier, sexier. Oh yeah, those are no, those are way gone now. It's like it just like me on a great weekend eating a whole damn cake and I gained 5 pounds, but then I step on the scale and now it's 15. I'm like, what the hell just happened? So
Right.
I need your crystal ball. I know that there's all these people talking about, oh, China's selling this, or China can't be selling because their currency, is still staying at a level that doesn't show that. I need the Brian Stevens crystal ball of what the hell's going on and what does it look like once the dust settles, which I know is an impossible question to answer, but you're my talented friend, so I'm going to let you roll with it.
Yeah, human beings, well, actually, middle-aged men. We are the only thing in the universe that can actually create mass. I could eat something that weighs 6 ounces and I gain a pound. I create mass. It's amazing.
Yes, child, gifted.
All right. Well, everybody's freaking out right now. I keep seeing rates are going to 8. Rates are going to 8. Um, I say, all right, let's play that out. Rates go to 8. Now, all of this, everything is subject to change. We could wake, and we've seen this. This is what's driving people nuts. We could wake up tomorrow, and our trade war with China could be over, and we could get back to normalcy. And when you look at those who really, truly affect interest rates, not all of us prognosticators, but when you look at the U.S. Treasury, the Federal Reserve Board, HUD, Fannie, Freddie, Jenny, the FHFA, the FDIC, when you look at these groups that actually there was like affect rates, they blended, they merged like what all their prognostications were, and they've got us at the end of 2026 being somewhere in the low fives. Now nobody expected all this insanity to take place.
Mhm.
I truly think we're going to be there. I think in getting there, we're going to see a lot of the spikes we've seen over the past few days. We were talking about a refinance market just last week, and now we're
Yeah.
talking about rates that are, significantly worse. Here's who this really affects: the loan officer who promises a rate and forgets to lock that loan. There are people who are just white knuckling this thing right now. That's why I say
Mhm.
just lock it, dock it, put the money in your pocket, be done with it. Okay.
Yes.
Now here's how I see this whole thing going. Right now we have absolute unaffordability in every single market everywhere. It's kind of like this. Have you ever gotten really just really pie-eyed, just plastered drunk before?
Yes, yes, and I made a good attempt last night at the Frozen Four, but yes.
Oh, okay. So here's what happens. You ever get really plastered and you wake up the next morning, you're like, man, boy, I should have a Bloody Mary right now because my head is just screaming. And you have a
Hmm.
Bloody Mary, and that hangover, it goes away. And you can roll, and you can roll, and you can do it the next day, and you can even do it the next day. But eventually, you're going to have to pay the piper. And the more you let it roll, the worse it gets. We have been on this type of cycle economically on a roll for all the wrong reasons, with our spending habits, with our trade disparity habits, with the tariffs against us. Eventually, the trajectory that we're on, I heard an economist said, if we continued spending as we have last year, we are going to have the dollar and the dollar so diluted to pay the debt and the interest on the debt that we will no longer be the international currency, and that hangover is something that has to be avoided. Eventually, you have to pay the piper, and right now, what we're doing is we're decided we're going to pay the piper today, and it's time to quit drinking and face the hangover. So we're going to have some problems that are in front of us. One of the side effects of this jovial ride we've been on is we've allowed property values to become unobtainable. We have literally turned the first-time home buyer into not an endangered species, but extinct. Now, without the first-time home buyer, you can't effectively get the move-up buyer. So we've got issues with affordability that are problematic. We have seen spikes in equity that don't make sense. So let's say rates go to 8. Let's say that the tariffs, which I believe they're 145 going over to China, and China's got us at 125. Now, 125 against us isn't that big of a deal. If you think about this, Sean, come on, give me a break. I mean, what do we buy from China? What do you buy from China?
Everything from the slave labor.
How about the computer we're on, the glasses you're wearing, the shirt you're wearing, the shoes you're wearing, the underwear you're wearing? Everything is from China. So, those $190 Nikes, no big deal. They're just going to be $400 tomorrow. That's not going to affect you. But you see, here's how I see this. When we had massive out of control inflation back in the 1980s, Paul Volcker went out there and he did what Jerome Powell was trying to do, but Paul Volcker did it the right way. He raised rates 3 times as high as Powell did, and he did it in a quarter of the time. And we went and looked at this and we got the message. We said, oh, and we stopped spending and all of our supply lines replenished and we had a surplus. Prices came down, inflation under control for the next 50 years. Did it. Now, what we're doing over here with Powell is Powell has kind of going about this a slow way. And it hasn't had the effect that we need. It's like what Volcker did was chopping her arm off with an axe. And what Powell is doing is like chopping her arm off with a butter knife. Well, that butter knife's going to hurt because it's going to take a lot longer to get through. These tariffs are going to actually have a Volcker effect on our spending habits. When my shoes are $400, not $180, I'm not buying them. I call this our conspicuous consumption. And for 75% of the population that doesn't have any savings out there, they're going to be forced to save their money because all the shit they're buying right now, they're not going to be able to afford tomorrow. They're going to have to save that money. Home values are going to take a significant haircut. If home values take a significant haircut upwards of maybe 15, 20%, that would be massive. And everyone's going to say, oh my God, we just lost $15 trillion in equity. The world is ending. And it might put us in a recession that people are calling a depression. But even if we lose 10 to 15%, the vast majority of people who bought houses over the past 10 years are going to realize so much equity that it's going to put them on what would be a normalized trajectory, not the one that we've been on. They're not going to lose their ass on this stuff. It's going to put us back on a normal trajectory. Now, during this time when we're having our tariff war, it will inevitably get fixed to something that is a little bit more favorable, hopefully, to the United States. Of course, if rates are high, they're going to have to drop down because people aren't spending money because we have the Volcker effect on our economy. So now we come out of this thing, the trade war, 6 months, 12 months down the road. And we come out and we can realize what's going on. And I'm looking at properties. And I'm saying, oh my God, I can actually afford to buy that thing. Look at rates are at 5.5%. And for the first time in my life, for 70% of the people out there, I actually have some money in my pocket. It's going to create a better buyer. It's going to create a more responsible United States and a much more responsible housing market. Because you see, back when we had rates in the 2s and 3s, we always bid up to not the sales price. We bid up to the payment price. So it doesn't matter if rates are 2s or 10s, we're going to bid up and find out the maximum that we can actually go ahead and afford. So we have a market right now that is sustainable by rates in the 2s, yet we're in the 6s. Well, that's an unsustainable market. It's an artificial market that was created during the whole COVID pandemic. So what this is going to do is pull prices back down a little bit. We want rates to be somewhere in between 6 and 8 in the ebbs and flows. That's where we're healthiest. We have an unhealthy artificial market. This whole hangover that we're going to go through is going to bring some normalcy back to us for the long term. So are we going to have pain over the next 6 or 12 months? Yeah. And there's going to be so many black swans. I don't even know. This whole thing could end tomorrow. But if it plays itself out in a reasonable path, yeah, I think we're going to see rates somewhere in the low fives. I think we're going to see houses that are a little bit more affordable. And, and I think this is going to be a good thing and it's healthy all across the board.
Well, and you talked about the first time home buyer in there, and what's nuts is the average age of the first time home buyer is 38 years old. I mean, that's
And,
whenever I
and the
think
average,
first time home buyer, it's somebody that's out of college, starting their career, starting their life, or starting their family formation, not a 40-year-old that's finally getting out of mom's basement. I mean, that's
yeah,
just crazy.
you don't have you have jaded first time home buyers. You've gone through that thing where you think this world's a wonderful place. The aspiring, enthusiastic, happy 20-something-year-old. No, we got jaded buyers. And the average age of a buyer when you blend it is 57 years old. It's almost retirement age.
Mm.
Now, this needs to be corrected, and the only way to get there, Sean, unfortunately, is to go through some pain to deal with some of the corrections from all the partying we've been doing in the past. All the
Yeah.
partying, all the fun, all the bubbly, all the conspicuous consumption. Yeah, it's time to pay the piper, and I think that's what we're doing.
Well, and we always know that money never stops moving depending on what interest rate is. So there'll always be a
No, it
market,
doesn't.
and especially if you're into the niches or whatever, if you're finding your path and working with your SOI or your community, there's still business to be had, is basically what I'm saying. All right,
Absolutely.
we got about 7 more minutes. You had a fun show talking about dysfunction or what the hell's going on over at Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. It's a little bit of I wouldn't say an S show, but kind of is. And there was talk whenever the new administration came in that, hey, Fannie and Freddie's been under government conservatorship for way too long. They've more than paid their debt back to, the handout that they received, whatever. And it's time to let them release and then let the stockholders that own that stock of those companies to rightfully get some dividends or some profits from them being just an amazing profitable center. So what is going on at those two agencies? Because you see videos of, they're paying X amount of dollars to a rent per month, and there's not a single person in there, or people are getting fired. So go ahead and enlighten us.
Well, here's the thing. Last year, which was one of the worst years on the books for mortgages, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fannie and Freddie, their profits, just their profits, Fannie and Freddie's profits with all their inefficiencies was still nearly $30 billion. Do the math on that. Fannie and Freddie are the most profitable company in the world, even in a bad year. They have 26,000 employees. Yeah, and what they found through, again, I don't want to get into politics on this, but the whole Doge thing, and I was watching one of these shows and they were walking through a Fannie Mae office, and I mean, it is stories and stories. I mean,
Yeah.
it is acres and acres of cubicles, and there's nobody there. And this is like on a
But the
Wednesday.
kitchen staff's there making lunch, but
The only
nobody's
people
there.
who showed up is the cafeteria and the janitors.
Yes.
And they're putting
Yeah.
food out there every day.
Uh,
Nobody is there with their 26,000 employees. Is there inefficiencies there? Yeah. So, what is a knee jerk? They go ahead and fire 100 people, fraud, which is going to be a buzzword you're going to hear for the coming weeks. So yeah, Fannie and Freddie has some stuff that they need to clean up. Listen, we have to accept a certain amount of government inefficiency. And if they're making $30 billion, and it's not the government inefficiency that bothers me. It's the fact that there's somebody out there working the system and getting paid for doing nothing. Like
mhm.
it's not the 26,000. It's that guy. It's that one guy who's sitting on his ass right now, working his Game Boy, sitting on his couch eating pizza pockets on a Wednesday, making $80,000 a year with full bennies off the back of taxpayers. That's what kind of ticks me off. But yes, there is massive inefficiencies. We've seen a rollover of all leadership in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. And I think what we're going to see is we're going to see those numbers trimmed down more than 100. We just have to, simply because it's bad optics for Fannie Freddie, and they understand it. And Bill Pulte, who is now running the FHFA, is going to trim that thing up, in line with what the Trump administration is looking for. But I do got to tell you, I am a huge proponent of getting recapitalizing and releasing Fannie and Freddie from conservatorship. I absolutely am. I think we should have done it a couple of years ago. They are starting to recapitalize and they are going to be healthy. But I'll tell you right now, Sean, I wouldn't do it today. With all the uncertainty that we have with these tariff wars right now, there's a potential that recap and releasing them, especially with the volatility in the stock and the bond market, would have a disproportionate negative effect on interest rates that would catch everybody off guard. Then I just don't think we can afford that. Like, I'm okay if rates continue going up. And in fact, I think they are going to go up in the short term. They're going to drop back down, but this volatility, it kind of makes sense. But if we recap and release, we might see numbers that make sense to nobody, and it wouldn't put the brakes on the housing market. It would run us into a brick wall at 80 miles an hour. So
Yeah, I
recap
do
and
believe.
release, but maybe do it next year.
Yeah, I think they gave them like a 24-month runway is what they were kind of, chirping at or releasing to the media late last year. So you're right. That runs us through this year and possibly the almost, late next year,
Yeah.
before that happens. But as we see something, new day, something else pops up or somebody spouts off and it's nuts. And it's like the damn, the market and some of the things didn't take their medication and we're just along for the ride.
Well, I want to say this in closing here. We don't let this market get to you. Like, if you're a loan officer right now, there's a great study. 76% of people out there right now think it's a good time to sell their house. 91% of people still believe in real estate agents and intend on using a real estate agent on their transactions. 76% of people who were polled said working with a real estate agent is a benefit to them. We know that
Mhm.
there's still people who want to sell their house. We need to get that messaging out there. People are still positive. People are actually more positive now about what we're doing for a living than they have in the past. I think what we as realtors and lenders need to do is really have to look at our database. We need to put ourselves out there. Reach out to your database and let them know, the world's not ending right now. You're not going to find yourself upside down on your house tomorrow. Get your talking points and have these type of conversations. Because one of the things that I always tell my team to do is I say, if you want to have a recession-proof business from a lender's perspective, you have to work with recession-proof real estate agents. And, when we look at any different market, we've got all the analytics on realtors everywhere. There are recession-proof agents in every single market, not one or two, a lot of them who
Mhm.
were killing it. I mean, absolutely killing it. So surround yourself as a real estate agent with a positive, enthusiastic, informed loan officer. And loan officers, go seek out recession-proof agents who have, we do a minimum of 10 listings and 3 buy-side transactions per month, and they're everywhere. It doesn't have to be that person. But listen, you find people who share the same values about this business as you do, and no matter what happens going forward, you guys are going to be fine.
Yeah, you kind of touched on in the chat. I don't want to mispronounce the first name. Haas Lopez asks, do you believe that eventually AI will replace loan officers? We both think no, that is not going to happen. But for the lazy loan officers who don't do anything, AI will put you behind the eight ball to where you might be a Walmart greeter at some point. So,
Yeah, AI might take away some of the, refinances that we have. It might even take away some of the, borrowers who are putting 40% down with perfect credit, and, very easy kind of. But the problem, like I said, Sean, is what AI will never ever be able to do for realtors and lenders is they'll never be able to go to your Friday night football game, sit in the stands, look down the row and say, "Hey, Sally, how's June doing in her soccer?" And June going, "Doing pretty good, Brian." They'll never be able to do that. We have numbers, we have
mhm,
community, and at the end of the day, we still bump bellies with each other, and AI cannot do that.
100%. Well, brother, I appreciate it. We're right at the 30-minute mark. That kind of worked out perfectly. So until next month, you have a wonderful weekend and we'll be talking then, man.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Bye bye.